So I am very excited today to be with my friend Sandy Summers, and I'm continuing with some author interviews, contributors to the new InScribe anthology, which is called Creativity and Chaos: Artistic Endeavors for Trying Times. And it's so great to see you, Sandy.
Great to see you, Tracy. You're
Hi.
always a joy to
Oh,
talk to and be
thank
with.
you. Oh, I always enjoy seeing you too. You know, we're old pals, and we usually see one another once a year at fall conference. So it's always lovely to talk to you. So
Mhm.
yeah, so we're talking about this new anthology, and you actually have three pieces in the anthology, which is kind of cool. You've got one in the reflection, which is called Developing a Creative Lifestyle in Trying Times. And that is such an intriguing title. Why don't we start with that one? You can tell us what inspired you, what is it about?
Um, well, it's about what I learned during COVID.
Uh-huh.
Initially, it started when one person I knew who was very involved in his life just descended into Netflix and depression. And I thought, some people do, but as I watched different videos and listened on the radio and saw on Facebook that people began to be creative.
Yeah.
Women created all kinds of baking and cooking projects. In fact, sometimes I went to the grocery store and couldn't find what I wanted. So that was one part. Another part was people who were in industry um, gravitated toward COVID projects, for instance, making the plastic shields at stores and so on,
Yes.
and sewers, seamstresses making masks and selling them. So those were two of the incentives. Another incentive came early on when one gentleman interviewed on the radio said, I don't know why I was going in a million directions, meetings at work and taking kids here, taking kids there, no time for family. So he had to reevaluate his priorities. So
Mhm.
that's where it started. And then I wrote it as um, opinion piece. And
Yeah.
I thought, well, I'd redevelop it into a component that showed how different people cope during trying times. And one particular theme that I drew out was from teaching English as a second language.
Mhm.
Like when we're going through trying times, we often want to go to a psychologist or talk it out, but they want to use physical expressive
Oh,
um, movements. For example, during um, the movie Hotel
okay.
Rwanda,
Yes.
uh, people wanted to act out the the movie, and the directors were afraid. Well, aren't you going to be re-traumatized? No, for some reason it was healing for them. And I still remember one view of people lying on the road and trucks coming and not bumping into them in the movie, but somehow reenacting that was healing for them.
Mhm.
Or watching pictures or seeing pictures of children who had lived in war zones like Cambodia and El Salvador, who drew pictures of what they were experiencing, like bombs dropping or guns shooting or their homes being burned. So these were some of the expressive ways that they coped with their traumas.
Mm. I feel like you've just hit the nail right on the head there, that we need as humans to have an outlet, don't we? And
Yes.
how much better to have a creative outlet or an expressive outlet than that, rather than just trying to bottle it up and then it's going to explode in some other negative way. Um, that,
Yes.
which,
Yes. And one of the themes too was when God closes a door, he opens a window.
Yeah.
because it did come out of my own experience too, where, we couldn't go anywhere,
Mhm.
meet with people. Churches were closed. So Sunday mornings, and I've written about this several times, I went out bird watching
Yes.
every week and every Sunday morning that was possible. And then came back home to watch the 11 o'clock service online.
Yeah.
So that was my own jumping off spot.
Yes, I actually recall reading something else you wrote about that, the bird watching. And what a wonderful way to, like you say, it's like, okay, well, I can't meet with my people like I normally would, but to be out in nature and to find some kind of, way to still experience the joy of God's creation, and the beauty around us.
Yes.
Yeah.
And meeting other birders.
Mm,
At that time, I needed to be really refreshed from when I took courses in the 80s.
yeah.
And so I had bird watchers that would tell me different birds that I wasn't familiar with. So there was connection, human connection.
Yes, that's so cool. And I like something else that you said. Um, where I think, unfortunately, I feel like, we've kind of gone back to normal, so to speak. And a lot of people have just gotten right back on that treadmill, that rat race, that, wheel, where, people were forced to
Mhm.
slow down and just have more time for reflection, more time for creativity, more time for their immediate family. And there was something potentially refreshing about that. Of course, there was difficulty too, and the isolation and stuff was difficult, but there were some kind of refreshing aspects to that whole season.
Yes, there were if we looked for them. And the other thing that I thought just recently is that you mentioned that we're back to normal, is that sometimes out of those experiences come a new direction, a new focus, a new widening of your own life and experience
Yeah, yeah.
and
Hopefully,
your own relationships.
yes, and I hope that the lessons were learned.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, during COVID, I wasn't able to visit the kids in the family.
Yeah.
And I know when I visited them, they'd all rush to see me and want to talk at once. And so after COVID, I thought, well, I need to get to know them again. And I thought, well, I couldn't have that rushing to greet me all at once. So I took each of them out in turn to lunch and to go out for a walk. They live near Fish Creek Park in Calgary. So, yeah, starting a new pattern of relationships.
Oh, that's cool. That's
Mhm.
so cool. I love that. Wow. Um, well, I'm sure we could talk at length more about about this piece and just the whole experience of the time. And it's one of the things that I really like about this anthology, is that there is such a variety of responses to the way people dealt with that trauma and other trauma, other difficulties in life.
Yes.
And so I love the idea also of creativity and finding new things to do. As you mentioned, some people were baking and others were sewing and, just doing different things. So it's super cool to me that you have a couple of pieces in a little section in the book called Hobbies and Home. I
Mhm.
haven't read them yet, and I'm kind of excited. One is called Shirley's Energy Bites, and the other is called Chaos in the Garden. Wow. Tell us about those.
Well, um, the Shirley's Energy Bites was my first one, easy to write, because I thought, it's not just our chaos. Sometimes God asks us to minister to others in theirs.
Mhm.
I just felt a strong impression to go visit this friend. I didn't know her very well, but God just really impressed upon me. And as I was preparing it, I knew that her husband had died 2 years ago,
Mhm.
and I came across a verse in Psalm 27 from the New Living Bible, teach me how to live. And it just jarred me because when Joni was recuperating, she was so bitter and she just wanted to be healed and God didn't. And then she said, and she wanted to die. And she said, well, Lord, if I can't die, then show me how to live. And I thought there was a perfect example for her, for Shirley. So when I visited, she was saying how depressed she was.
Yeah.
And really a lot of it was grief.
Right.
So we were able to chat about her life, that she'd always lived with her husband. I don't know, 50 years or something like that, but they'd been married. And she poured tea and gave me these energy bites. And I was able to pray for her. And I just felt the Spirit lifting her spirit at the time. So with those energy bites, I thought, put them in the book. And I was invited to a shower where we were asked to bring a recipe. So I thought this would be a good one.
Oh, wow.
Easy to make and just small and delicious, about the size of a Timbits.
Nice. Oh, I'm excited to get that recipe, but I also love the story behind it, how, and it isn't that true, like a connecting point. Sometimes it's as simple as a cup of tea,
Yes.
the time to have a cup of tea and something, with a friend, somebody who just needs some
Mhm.
interaction. That's really cool. Okay, Chaos in the Garden. I'm super intrigued by that now.
Well, wouldn't you know that Janelle Derry wrote Garden Chaos? And
Yes.
we didn't know each other had done that. And she's in my small local writers group.
Nice.
So mine started with this vision last year where I wanted a much more decorative garden.
Mhm.
And so I started, but it was too big a project for 1 year. And I thought, well, Lord, can I do it? It just seemed like you were initiating this project. So as I went along, I realized it was me being uh, needing to take this grand vision, which we often have,
Yeah.
and break it down into steps and sometimes into smaller steps.
Mm.
So that was basically what I had to do last summer. And more happened in the fall. I had to have a neighbor boy, teenager, help me finish some of the hard work.
Mhm.
And yeah, I realized that God gives you a vision, but you have to break it down into small steps and invite others to share your projects with you.
You're so wise. You always have such wise words, Sandy.
Oh, but what it's like going through it sometimes.
I love that because those are like they should be just like, no brainers, but it's so true. Like sometimes we're overwhelmed by the scope of whatever, and yet God just at one step at a time, one day at a time. Um,
Mhm.
so breaking it down, and then also the idea that we can't always do it alone. We need people to come alongside.
And that was my big issue. I wanted to do it all alone. And
Yeah.
then, wouldn't you know, this year with Calgary having a water shortage, terrible water shortage, as well as hot weather, dry weather during July.
Yeah.
Uh, well, doesn't look all that wonderful, but there's always next year.
There's always next year. That is the beauty of a garden. It's always, well, maybe next year.
That's right.
Boy. Well, I mentioned at the top that, you and I have known each other for a few years now, and I consider you my friend. Um,
Same here.
Why don't you tell us some more? I know you've done lots of writing. You've had all kinds of articles and things in various publications. Tell us a little bit more just about your writing journey on as a whole and some of your other things that you've done.
Yes. Um, I think it was in our InScribe Writers blog that I wrote a piece called Interrupted Writer because I won my first contest when I was 12 or 13 in a youth contest.
Mhm.
And I didn't write for publication till later. I found the Upper Room devotional, but that was only very periodical, maybe two or three that were published, and then I'd wait a few years. And then towards retirement, I woke up one morning thinking, well, I've got to have something more on my agenda than just housekeeping and visiting family and friends and maybe traveling. And I thought, well, let's work on writing. But I had a lot of development to to come my way. So I took courses, and InScribe was really good because I've been on the InScribe Writers Online and the professional blog.
Yeah.
So that has honed my skill. I look back over my 10 years of since the first blog, and some of them are really good writing. Some of them I think, ooh, should I delete this one? So InScribe has really been an impetus. And then I suddenly realized, well, I'm not writing much for the Fellowscript magazine, so I've been more regular.
Mhm.
Sometimes I really have to ask God, what do I write here?
Mm. Mhm.
And often, even with the blog post, once I'm finished, then I allow God the space to show me what I should write next.
Mm.
So it isn't just off the cuff. It sometimes takes a lot of work to finish those pieces.
Yeah. Yeah. And outside of InScribe, you've done other writing too. I know you've done writing in your church and in various other
Yeah,
publications.
mostly devotionals for Upper Room, and then there's one Secret Place. They just ask for short devotionals of about 180 words.
Yeah.
And sometimes you want your message to be a bit longer, but they just want a couple sentences or a short paragraph. So it's learning to hone your message down to the story, the point, and the prayer.
And that is really challenging. Like, boy, when you think about 180 words, that is not very much.
No, it isn't.
But like you said, it really does force you to choose your words wisely and carefully, uh, I would imagine.
Yes, it does. And what is the point?
Yeah, what is the point? Well, I sure appreciate this time, spending some time with you. It wasn't long enough, but we will chat again, my friend.
Yes.
We will. Anyway, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time out today and talking with me. And you're always so inspiring. You're such an encouragement, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I really do.
Okay. Well, thank you, Tracy. And you are an inspiration to me and to InScribe.
Oh, thanks.